Om Pa Good morning and welcome to the Sunday service. Today is a Father's Day. I wish happy Father's Day for everybody. So this morning we are going to meditate 2 minutes. Then after that, Venerable Sanatha Vihari is going to give a Dhamma talk. So right now we'll do some kind of meditation. So Chandasara is going to lead the meditation.
Good morning, everyone. First, let's start breathing meditation. Let's engage in breathing meditation for a couple of minutes. Breathing in and breathing out gently. Now, we shall cultivate loving kindness thoughts towards all living beings in this way. May all the living beings be physically well. May all the living beings be safe. May all the living beings be mentally well. Let's continue loving kindness meditation until we hear the bell sound.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Today our speaker, Venerable Sanat Bihari, resident monks at the Sarachandra Buddhist Vihara, North Hollywood, is very busy traveling different countries. I checked last month with his teacher, Venerable Khalid, and he said Sanat Vihara is in Spain, sometime in Mexico, sometime in South America, so many places. Very popular in, of course, in Europe and here both, especially in the Latino community. Actually, we are very proud about him, and we have to say thanks for all the Dhamma works for him and his teacher, Venerable Kolit and Srinivasa, both also. Thank you, Sanat Vihari. So you can start your talk now.
Thank you so much, Bante. First and foremost, I'm paying my respects to the Chief Bante Shanti for this opportunity, all the other senior Bantes at the International Buddhist Meditation Center, and also to all the lay devotees that make all of this possible. Thank you so much for this invitation. And I'd like to start off also by paying respects to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So nice to be here with everyone this Sunday morning, what we have left of it, Father's Day also. Happy Father's Day to all of you. And to the Supreme Sammasambuddha. In many suttas, the Buddha says that his followers are his sons. So we also have to be thankful to our father in Dhamma, the Sammasambuddha Gautama, for making all of this possible for us. I didn't really have a plan for the talk today, as some of you may already know. I don't really plan these things out. I try to get inspired by something that happened in the week. So that's what something happened yesterday. We had a SEAL program, 8 precepts program, and we also opened it up for other monks and lay people to share Dhamma. And during one of these conversations, there was a man who was having problems understanding non-self. I mean, who doesn't, right? We all have problems. He was just a little bit struggling a little bit more than usual, or probably more interested, more curious than most people are. And maybe some people just take the monk's word for it or on faith. He was more inquisitive in nature, let's say that. And I was just listening in. I was sitting in the back, but I saw both sides, him and the people trying to explain, self to him. They were getting louder and louder and speaking faster and faster, like if that was gonna help them each other communicate or understand what's going on. Just because you're louder or speak faster or interrupt the other person, it doesn't explain. The explanation doesn't make the explanation better. So then I kind of wanted to interfere and stop that kind of unskillful conversation that was going on, or that it was evolving to. And something just came to mind out of nowhere. I think it has to do with my original training was in anthropology. I was originally an anthropology major for 2 years, and then I changed. So something came to mind out of the blue. And I told this man, are you familiar with, hunter-gatherer cultures and the kind of spirituality that they practice? He said, yes, I have some idea. I said, well, we don't really find kind of like the organized religion that we do nowadays, and we don't find really monotheism or polytheism as we understand it now. Many of them had kind of these animistic beliefs, right? We classify them nowadays as animism. They probably wouldn't call themselves that, but that's just kind of what we use now as a category for them. So what does animism mean? It means attributing a soul, a spirit, or personhood to what nowadays we consider inanimate objects, or maybe things that are alive but we don't consider as important as humans, right? So even today in many Aboriginal and Native American cultures and other cultures too, you'll see this where nature is kind of personified in like, the clouds are a being and the river is a being, or maybe you hear the spirit of the tree or the spirit of the rocks and things like this. So what's going on here? Well, what I proposed to this man was that we're still practicing animism to this day. We've just reduced the amount of beings that we include or things that we attribute spirit or soul to or personhood to. And for many of us growing up in the West and modernity, although there's an increasing number of atheist and religious, not religious nuns, right? Like not nuns, but like non-religious people. They classify themselves as non-religious, still spiritual. Although this number is increasing, even within, the Christian majority of the United States and in the West, we still grant ourselves this idea of personhood or soul or spirit. So I proposed to this man that this is a form of animism. We are still doing the same thing that the hunter-gatherers were doing. Now we just limited it to this animal. Now only this animal is the one that has a spirit or a soul or personhood if you're more of a secular type. Where does this come from? Well, it's very interesting. In my current studies, finishing up my degree in psychology, when we took developmental psychology, we learned about a certain stage in life when you're a very young child where you develop this thing called theory of mind of others theory. That's when the baby begins to recognize that it's a independent self, and also that those other people are also selves too. So this idea that we have about us being a person, a real person, or attributing this kind of like soul, spirit, personhood to, it's something that is not originally found in human beings. It's something that is comes a little bit later, sometime later, and it's something that also through culture gets molded. And it was this same theory of mind that allows us to attribute a personhood to like little babies when they're born. Little babies are making noises, and the mother and the father kind of think that the baby's like actually talking to them or saying words, or like the baby has a personality. That's not entirely true, right? That's not what's happening there. But the mother or the father is using this ability that they develop theory of mind with culture too, in order to attribute personhood to the baby. And we do that with our pets too. And we do that with other things too, in nature or other things, depending on our, spirituality or religious beliefs. So this idea of a self, a real self, a permanent self, a soul, a spirit, or real personhood is something that is kind of built into the organism, into us. And I kind of suspect that it might be built into, other organisms also. So when I explained it to this man, he kind of saw him cool down, and he said, yeah, okay, I understand that. And then both sides kind of stopped arguing. But it didn't take long for someone else to say something else, and then they started again. Luckily enough, my teacher, Bante Kolita here, said, okay, that's the end of the Dhamma talk. We're going to finish it up, because there was no end to it. People were emotionally defending their points of views instead of trying to understand each other and communicate what they understood to be true. So I guess my topic today is anatta. What is anatta, right? I think in order to understand anatta, we need to take a historical perspective. We need to understand the teachings of the Buddha within its historical, cultural context. So many times when you read analysis of the development of Buddhism and the development of this, they have this theory about during the time of the Buddha that there was this counterculture movement, or there was this kind of philosophical debate, or between the shamanic movement, which consisted of Buddhism, Jainism, and other shamanic groups, wanderers, and Vedic, Brahmanic movement, and that they were in this struggle and this dichotomy to see who's going to be the one to be the biggest influence in India at that time. And it was within this context that we see the Buddha propose his truth, his knowledge of no self. And it was in opposition to the Vedic culture, the understanding of a self. Atman in Sanskrit, or Atta in Pali. What is Atman? So at least during the time of the Buddha, and the way that he presents Atman in the suttas, he claims that at that time, the Brahmins, or those who followed the Vedas, thought of the self, or Atman, consisting of two things. It had two characteristics. And this is what the Buddha always argues against. One, that the Atman is eternal. It's permanent. It doesn't change. The second one is that it's always blissful. So when we try to understand what the Buddha is proposing with anatta, no self or non-self, it's a direct argument against that idea. Sometimes us as modern people living within our own culture, we try to kind of transplant that idea of non-self to our idea of what a self is. So many times you'll hear people say, anatta is no ego. You just have to get rid of your ego. And that's what we're talking about. I mean, that's part of it, but that wasn't the main concern of the Buddha. The Buddha's argument was more of a ontological argument, more of a metaphysical argument, not so much a psychological one. Although there is that getting rid of that egocentric tendencies, which we can call mano, which is one of the 10 fetters. But when we see him argue against the Atman idea, he's arguing against a metaphysical self. He's arguing against a permanent happiness that is always there. So in order to understand anatta, or no self, we have to view it through the lens of the time of the Buddha. The main thing that the Buddha is arguing against, the permanent self. That's why we start off with the 3 characteristics of reality as first one, anicca, impermanence, change, transitoriness. That is a direct argument against Atman, the permanent self. What comes after that? Dukkha. Again, a direct argument against that the Atman is forever blissful, or happiness. And then comes the result. What do you get after anicca dukkha? Well, according to the Buddha, the conclusion is anatta, non-self. If something is always changing and is changing in such a way that you don't like it and you can't control it, you have no agency in it, how can you call something which you have no agency over yourself? How is that yourself? You have no control over it, and it's becoming into a state that you don't like. So this is the real understanding of anatta, in contrast to our modern psychological understanding that we impose onto when we hear anatta. And there is that to it, but it's not the main argument of the Buddha. The Buddha is not arguing against, our modern understanding of a self, a constructed self, by culture and by all the experiences that we've taken in our whole lives and through our developmental maturity. That's not what the Buddha is really arguing against. It's obviously it's part of it, but that's not his main concern. The main concern of the Buddha is the Atman, this permanent self. He's arguing against what's in the Vedas. This is what we need to understand. And when we look at the teaching of anatta, what is it for? It's to free us from rebirth. That is the main concern. Rebirth is painful. Birth, sickness, old age, death, not getting what you want, getting what you don't want, and losing what you love. That's all dukkha. Because everything's changing. All these things are always changing, and it leads to more birth, more sickness, more age, more death, and all these other dukkhas. In order to escape this, you need to escape rebirth. And in order to escape rebirth or re-arising, onobhavika, re-existing, re-being, we need to let go of this idea of a real self, a permanent self, a soul that is eternally blissful or happy or one with the universe, or however you want to make a self. We need to get rid of all selfing. And that's really, what we need to understand about what the Buddha is proposing with anatta. But, there's many ways to get there. And I do appreciate the psychological insights that we've gained now and anthropological insights that I kind of used earlier. And I found them very skillful with that man. I mean, that man, it seemed that what I proposed to him was a more palatable for him. And, he didn't get as combative or wasn't so quick to react. So there's some skillfulness in even, kind of going to anatta through like a psychological lens. But at the end of the day, it's a metaphysical kind of ontological argument that the Buddha is making. But I mean, if we just take it from like a naturalistic perspective, we can see how this tendency to attribute selfness to oneself and to others is basically innate into this organism, right? Into this human animal. So we can see how hard it can be to overcome, right? It's kind of counterintuitive. It's going against our nature to see others in ourselves, right? Free of self, and nobody really there, right? No ghosts in the machine. Well, I think I talked long enough. I like to always save some time for questions and comments, rebuttals, or whatever. So now's the time. Now's the time for you. You can put something in the chat, or you can raise your hand and go ahead and speak if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make.
If you have any question, comment, you can ask.
Tom.
Yes. Thank you for the talk. The question of self is something you really have to deal with your entire practice. Reverend Kusala gave a talk about self a while ago. And he said it was not self as opposed to no self. And that got me over the hump. I didn't have a self. I'm not this. I'm something else. And there's no I. So thank you for bringing the topic up. It's something to be dealt with continually.
Definitely, right? Because when someone cuts you off, or like the self is very evident, right? You see it right there. So it's something we always need to work on. Let's see. John says, thank you for sharing this Dhamma talk. It was great to hear. Thank you for being here. I thrive in conversation. I love, to have this dialogue, this interchange of ideas. So I'm not that much of a fan of just preaching. As Bhante knows, Bhante Shanti, he always, he knows that I like to give Dhamma discussions as opposed to Dhamma talks. So that's my invitation for another question or comment.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, John.
Any recommendations for how to put this into practice?
Mm-hmm. The Buddha, I mean, I'm always going to say the Buddha's a genius and how great he is, but here I go again. The Buddha's so great that he actually gave us a very easy way to practice this. So especially when you look at the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses within the Pali Canon, there's something called the gradual training. And he's here teaching, he's mostly speaking to non-Buddhist people who are lay non-Buddhist people. And the way he gets them to begin the path is through giving, dana. Then I began to think, well, what does that have to do with like no self? Well, that's a good way to practice stop thinking about yourself, like to get rid of egocentrism, right? It's not like the complete no self, but you begin to reduce this infatuation or this obsessive concern about yourself and me, myself, and I. What do I want to eat? What do I want to do? And begin to think about others and start giving to others, giving time, giving kindness, support in whichever way that you can. And it's very interesting because even within the monastic training, there's a section where the Buddha tells the monks, this is the way you need to practice your monk's life. When you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking what you want to do this morning, you need to think, what would the other monks like to do this morning? Instead of thinking what you want to do. And let me do what those other monks want to do. So that's right in the beginning of the monk's training. And in the beginning of the lay path, the Buddha says to practice dana, giving to others. So I think that one very pragmatic thing that kind of gets overlooked in Buddhist circles is charity and generosity. We're so we love to study the suttas. We're very academic about study of Buddhism, about no self, a lot of theory and a lot of meditation. But where's the everyday no self, right? The reduction of the self in everyday life. And I think through giving, through kindness and generosity, we can begin to kind of loosen up the self. And I think that's the way I would go about it in the everyday life.
Thank you.
Bhante Sanata Vihari.
Bhante?
Yeah, I just kind of want to hear from you about this theory of Buddhist no soul is different from the soul theory of Brahmanism. If you look at from the theory of soul, and it's also different when we look at from the no soul theory of materialistic views, that is Uccedavadi. So I want to hear a little bit about the Buddhist theory of not self and the materialistic ideas of not self, that would be helpful. I just want to hear from you. Thank you, Bhante. I'm very happy to hear your Dhamma talk. Thank you.
Yes, Bhante. So I think here the important difference is that the Uchedavadins didn't believe in the results of they didn't believe that actions had consequences. They said you can do whatever you want, live your life, be free, be hedonistic. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter because there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no father, there's no mother. You know, there's a long list of all the things that they say. But although Buddhism, like the materialists, don't have a soul, we still have causes and conditions or actions and results, karma and vipaka, or karma and pala. So I would think, I would propose that the theory of karma, the law of karma, is what separates Buddhists from the Uchedavadas, the materialistic perspective.
All right, it looks like no any more question. Thank you again for the Venerable Sanati Vihari. And I will try to catch you again next
You have to
month.
come with me, Bhante. I'm going to kidnap you and take you to Mexico or Spain with me.
I'll try to catch you at least around August sometime. And say thank you so much again for your teacher also, Venerable Kolita and Venerable Srinivasa. Of course, you are very busy and you like to talk, discussion. I know about that, but our audience also very much like about you. So that's why we try to catch you every other months at least. So thank you again. Venerable, hope to see you soon. Take care of yourself. Thanks again.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay. Now we're going to chant the page 4 and page 10. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them all. Deluding passions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them all. Dhamma gates are limitless. I vow to study them all. Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shall call grief, and the sick find health relief. Nguyện di sự không đưa Bồ Tát tu nhân đi đàn chư chúng sanh giới cầu than Phật đạo. Nguyện di thực không đưa Bồ Tát ơn nhớ thiên hạ đẳng dự chúng sanh đa đồng phát Thank you again for everybody. I don't know who's going to give a Dhamma talk next Sunday. I request somebody did not answer, still we'll see. However, you can see our web page who's going to give a Dhamma talk next Sunday. Thank you again for everybody. By the power of the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, by the power of all the Bodhisattva, you all be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.